Okay, we're going to go on now to the meeting of the township itself, Cunningham Township. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Brown?
Here.
Hazen? Hersey?
Here.
Jacobson? Here. Miller?
Here.
Roberts?
Here.
Wu?
Here.
Okay. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is additions to the agenda. Oh, first the minutes for the previous meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Are there any changes to the minutes?
So moved.
Mary Alice Wu moves it.
Second.
Eric Jacobson, trustee. Is there a discussion, corrections? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of approving them indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, that passes. Other additions to the agenda? All right, we're coming to public participation to the township. I haven't received any other people who wish to speak to the township meeting. Is that true? There's nobody else in the audience who wishes to come forward to the township? One person does. Are you going to bring forward your... Are you finished filling that out?
This is Township?
This is the township. Okay. All right. We're going to move then to the penny to verify bills. Daniel Chenoweth, supervisor of a township.
Thank you. So the town fund had $123,769.08 in expenditures. General assistance fund had $63,516.36 in expenditures. The total was $187,285.44. Largely, as you'll see in the bills, this is for Q4 for social service disbursements. So the high number for town fund is largely social service disbursements at the end of the year. We had 113 general assistance participants, down 1 from last month. And the numbers have typically stayed the same in terms of homeless senior citizens and average age. We did have 3 rental assistance approvals last month, which is very low, and we had 14 this month. So between the 2 months, we're seeing an average, but we had very low and slightly higher this month. I would be happy to answer any questions about the bills.
Okay, starting around the corner, Mary Alice Wu.
So thank you very much for providing the Busey statement. I appreciate it. And it looks like you had put in the numbers that are relevant to the code for the account code next to it. So can you tell me a little bit on the 24th of June, there was a Motel 6 Urbana charge for $166. We stopped paying for hotels. Is that correct?
Yes, except the Angel Donor Fund.
Okay.
So Friday at 4 o'clock, a grandmother and her 4-year-old grandchild showed up at Cunningham Township. They were sleeping in their car. The windows were broken, so the water was actually rushing in. If you remember Friday, it was like a torrential downpour. Our staff went and duct taped and plasticed the windows. We used Angel Donor funds to put them up in a hotel through Tuesday. We had an emergency advocacy appointment with them Monday morning, and we essentially directed them to centralized intake for the homeless. The grandmother had some level of income, and so she's currently applying for rental assistance. We do provide emergency assistance as per our rules when there's a life or death situation, and we felt that this was a serious and egregious situation. We do. And we use donations from the community to provide those services.
All right. Thank you.
Bill Brown.
Under training for assessor, is $7,000 in 1 month. Was there that much left in the training budget for FY19?
So some of that's going to be covered by line item transfers at the next meeting.
So
is there any particular expenses that you had a question about?
No, it just looks like, did you guys do all this training in June, or is this, were
No,
they
no,
billed
some of that
for,
is-
you were
some-
billed for previous training?
Right,
Or
some were billed for previous
Billed
training.
for training that's going to be coming up later in the summer, or?
Yes, yes. So to reserve the seat, you have to pay. And, you know, some of these seats, they go really fast, or if a seat opens up, you know, you want to reserve it, so you have to pay.
Okay. So do you know how much was left in the training budget for FY19?
I don't have it in front of me,
Okay.
but
So whatever wasn't left in the budget for FY19, you're applying to the budget for FY20?
no. No, the two budgets are
Okay.
totally separate.
Oh, so you're going to transfer money from something that wasn't
Right.
used to this? I see.
Right.
But you don't know what yet?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Yes, Jared.
I guess my question was for Danielle. Wait, take your back. I didn't know where we might be coming across this, and I've visited the township, so I know the situation over there, but I was kind of surprised to see that there was a parking ticket that was paid. It's the bottom of page 5 under other expenses for clients, and can only assume that it must have been paid at a meter in your parking lot
Correct.
for someone. Did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so I'm meeting with parking enforcement on Wednesday about this. So the parking lot is owned by the township, and it's administered by the city per a parking agreement that dates back to the 1970s. Until a month ago, approximately 6 weeks ago, parking enforcement was not enforcing parking against our staff or number of our participants. So for about a year and a half now, our participants have come to, many of whom have like not even a dime in their pocket, have learned that they can essentially park in the spaces. I've requested bagged meters, and I was directed from finance to public works. And so we're in the process of getting bagged meters for our participants. There's a woman who came in who received a ticket. We, I believe, contested it. We also contested some tickets to our staff, and we're having some misunderstandings between the city and township on parking. I'm hoping to clarify those things, but in the meantime, we paid a ticket that came to this, and it was paid out of angel donor funds at this point. That is not something I'd like to see going forward. I consider it very unusual, but it seemed inequitable that this person, amongst all of our participants, would receive this ticket, and we were not able to have it forgiven in our parking lot, and she was facing a deadline. If we can receive payment back from the city for that, I would be happy to receive that payment, but I feel like we need to have a face-to-face conversation first, so we went ahead and took care of the payment out of those funds. So I don't think you will see that in the future going forward, and it's certainly not our practice to pay for those tickets, but there's some relationship issue we need to work out.
Okay, keep us in the loop as you guys try to work to resolve that, because I assumed it was for a client, and I very much think that we should not be charging or ticketing folks who are at the worst points of their life
Correct.
at most times when they come to the township.
Yep. Agreed. I'm not really sure why the change happened. It was sudden. It didn't involve any communication with the township, and I would like to address it, but I think, again, face-to-face is the best way to have these conversations. We value our partnership with the city. We appreciate, the services that the city has offered, and we'll have a conversation with them.
Okay, Eric.
In the interests of full disclosure, I think fixing tickets is a terrible thing, and I would never do it, except one day, we had a volunteer here who was in a meeting with us, who was donating her expertise for a particular meeting, and she had put money in the meter in the lot outside, but she got a ticket because she parked head in, and it didn't seem right. So I did mention it to Bill Gray. Bill said he'd take care of it. So in my entire life, I did fix one ticket under those circumstances. And I think it's okay to fix this one.
All right. We're not going to take a vote on that, though. Any other comments about the township budgets? Anybody would like to make?
These are the bills.
The bills, all right. The verified bills, yes, that's right, okay. So, all right, so we've just discussed the bills. There was, is there a motion to?
I'll make a motion to approve
Approve
town
bills?
fund and the general assistance fund.
Yeah, I misspoke. I said budget, but it was the bills. Okay, Jared Miller, make the motion. Anybody second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Eric Jacobson. All right, further discussion about the bills? Okay, those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that they are approved. Other reports from officers?
In your memo, there's two. I speak to social services in the budget, so I'll speak to those at those items. Just wanted to say we had about 100 attendees at the Self-Care Community Repair Wellness Fair this last Saturday from 3 to 6. It was a sweltering 90 degrees. We had yoga, dance, massage, haircuts, nail care, books and resources, and lots of kids' activities, which, yes, did include me breaking down and turning on the sprinkler at some point. I just want to thank our community partners, the Urbana Free Library, CU Trauma and Resiliency Initiative, H2O Salon had donated time. We had several barbers, nail care, et cetera. We've thanked, it's about 20 different providers, and we have thanked them on our website. So I just wanted to say it was a great success, and it went to show that no matter what your income level, you are entitled to take care of yourself and seek wellness. And I felt it had a great vibe and was a great community event. Also, I just want to say that Township Garden is bursting with greens. There's so many greens and peas and beets. It is a free garden. You pick them. You can come and pick them. We have a bag. We have scissors. You can do it when we're not there. Just take what you need and don't take any more. It's not just for our participants. It's for all our neighbors and friends, everyone in Urbana. Feel free to come eat. There's plenty, and it's going to go to seed soon, so please come and pick at the garden. I think Wayne has a officer's report, and so I'll give him the floor.
Okay, Wayne?
So actually, I didn't quite have a officer's report because I was preparing for the budget, but I do want to take this time. Last month when I was here, it was not my intention, and I don't believe I said that assessments didn't change. Okay, assessments can change from a multitude of reasons, like board of review decisions, factors. What I want to do in this upcoming budget, and I can speak to it later in the budget, is reassess, which is different from what has been done in the past, which is factor, right? So the difference, and I'll be brief, between a factor versus a reassessment is a factor is a uniform percentage increase or decrease to all properties in a neighborhood. So, for example, if you're going to factor something and increase it by 2% in a neighborhood, that means you're increasing the one-story houses, the two-story houses. If you don't segregate the factor out by property class, commercial property also gets factored by the same amount, condos. All these different types of property appreciate and depreciate at different rates. So what happens is if you rely solely on factoring as opposed to reassessment, which is coming up with a brand new value, during a reassessment of a neighborhood, all property, the values will change, but at different rates, right? Because it's going to change relative to the specific property's characteristics. And this is the difference that we're going to be doing now with that this budget pays for versus what has been done in the past. So I want to make that very clear. Yes, assessments change because of factors, because of multipliers.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. Okay, Bill?
So when they're referring to they look at every couple of years or something, you can't change an individual property's value, you can only change the neighborhood factor or something? Is that how it works?
No, not necessarily. So you can do a neighborhood factor, which is the uniform increase or decrease of an entire neighborhood or class of properties within a neighborhood. However, you can look at properties individually if you do the entire neighborhood, at which point every home will be looked at individually for an assessment change. And that's a reassessment or evaluation.
And have you done like a sample or anything to determine if there's a need to do that? How do you know there's a need to do that?
So there are assessment statistics that we look at, right? That we look at uniformity and fairness, right? So one measure of uniformity is what we call the coefficient of dispersion. And what that measures is how far away are the values from the median, right? And you say you're doing a good job if your coefficient of dispersion is under 15%. When I took office, January 1, 2018, the coefficient of dispersion was like 1650 something, right?
So in language I could understand, does that mean that the houses aren't selling for what they were assessed
No,
at?
no,
Or
no,
does
that
it have anything
means-
to do with what they actually sell for? What determines that coefficient of dispersion?
So you look at you do sales studies, right? But what you're looking at with the coefficient of dispersion is, so you have the baseline, which is the median, 33 and a third, right? What the coefficient of dispersion is measuring is how far from that median, right, each sale is. And you want to be within 15% up or down, according to guidelines, state guidelines. So we're over that when I took office. The only way to correct that is reassessment, because if you factor a neighborhood, that neighborhood's coefficient of dispersion stays the same. The median of that neighborhood will change, but the coefficient of dispersion, the statistic that measures equity, stays the same. There are other measures of fairness, like price-related differential, right, which measures whether higher price homes are going to be tend to be underassessed and lower price homes tend to be overassessed. And we were out of range for that statistic. And we were out of range in the direction of lower price homes tended to be overassessed.
So then with the coefficient of dispersion, when you're using that, you can get a different coefficient for each neighborhood?
You can, yes.
And so when you decide which neighborhoods to prioritize and reassess first, will you go to the
Right.
ones with the highest coefficient of dispersion?
Absolutely. Well, there are other factors. You don't use any one statistic by itself, but yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Are there other questions? Yes, Eric.
I'm sorry to ask the same question again, but I still don't understand coefficient of dispersion, so maybe let me see if I can pose a form in which I might understand it. When you go into a neighborhood, okay, and I'm going to, well, in the first place, is the coefficient of dispersion a property of a neighborhood? Do you compute that neighborhood by neighborhood?
Yes.
Okay.
And township-wide.
And township-wide, okay. So you could compute it on both levels, okay. So, and how you define a neighborhood, well, I don't know, that's a little bit intuitive, but maybe that's not central to my question. So what are the records, the numbers that you actually look at, go into a neighborhood, you look at records, and you calculate a coefficient of dispersion? What are the numbers that you actually use to calculate that?
The numbers come from the previous 3 years of sales.
Okay. So one of the factors are the previous 3 years of sales in that neighborhood.
So let me give you an example,
okay.
right? We have neighborhood 21, which is Capstone Quarters, right?
Okay.
Which has not been reassessed, factored, or otherwise since, I believe, 2011, right? This is a condo complex. They have over 200 units, some 2, some 3, some 4-bedroom units, right? We reassessed Capstone Quarters, right? Which means we looked at sales prices, and we applied a value to the 2-bedroom units. To all the 2-bedroom units, we applied a different value, slightly higher to the 3-bedroom units, and a value to the 3-bedroom units. Now, we looked at, the thing that jumped out about that neighborhood is that the median was low, right? The median was at in the 20s. William, do you have the exact? It's like 26, right? So roughly about 25, 26% below where the median should have been.
Okay,
But
you-
because they're condos, and condos are relatively easy to value, right? The numbers were really tight around that median, right? So the coefficient of dispersion was like less than 5%, right? So we don't look at any one measure. So they were low and consistently low, but the numbers were clumped around.
Okay. Now, when you say they were low, does that mean that the sales prices, that if you multiplied the sales price by 3, it was lower? If you multiplied the assessed value by 3, it was higher or lower than the sales price?
It was lower than the sales price by about 25%.
Okay, so they were assessed too low by about 25% based on this
Right.
on this sale price to assessment ratio. Okay, I got it. And, okay, so a dispersion value would be this ratio of sales price to assessment, whether different types of property really had very, very different values of that sales price to assessment, then that would be a high dispersion. If they had pretty much the same value, sales price to assessment, then that would be a very low dispersion. Is that correct? Am I getting that? Am I getting close?
No. William, you mind taking a stab at coefficient of dispersion?
Okay. Can y'all hear me?
Can I
Good
say
evening,
just
that's all.
one thing, because what I want to understand, because Wayne was saying that you value a particular property. Okay, so is this an assigned value based on the average price of square footage that would be throughout the county, or something like that? I didn't understand. I need numbers. I'm not
Okay.
a mathematician.
Can y'all-
Lord knows.
Okay, I guess the easiest way to kind of explain it is what you're trying to measure is uniformity. If you're doing something to one house, you sort of want to be doing it to all the particular properties. You don't want one person paying, I guess, the higher value and someone that's their neighbor with the same exact house paying a lower value. So that's what this is to correct. But
Okay.
what it is if something sells for 90,000,
Yeah, give me some
Okay.
numbers.
the assessed value, if it was 100% correct, which we all know that's chasing sales, would be 30,000. If it was a 90, because it's a third of the value. So what the ratio you're trying to achieve is that the assessed value divided by your sale price gives you a ratio. That ratio should be 0.3333, or a third of the value. In this case, it was not. So when we're looking at it saying it's 24% of the value instead of 33% of the value, now all we do is take the 3 years of sales that are given to us by the county
3 years of sales of
Yes.
what? Of properties in
Of-
the area, or
of that particular neighborhood, because you get the whole township, you'll get your ratio for the whole township. But what we did was we broke them out individually, because as a township, it looks as if it's correct. But if you divide it out, you start seeing some of these people are high, some of these people are low. So of course, when you average them all together, it looks right. But it's not fair to someone if it's supposed to be at 30,000 and you're setting them all at 20, and somebody's supposed to be at 30 and you're setting them at 50. So they're taking on the slack of the other people. That's where the inequities come in at. So the ratio is literally the assessed values divided by the sale prices, and it gives you ratios. Of course, there's some weightedness going on because some sales are invalid, some sales are valid, some are multiple sales, so you kind of have to have an opinion at that point.
so assessed value divided by
Sales price.
sales price. The lady behind you is shaking her head no.
You know,
In my head, yes, right then about what he was saying, but I definitely shook my head no.
Oh, because I was just wondering if you had something to add.
well, you know what, this could become a topic of a study session for our next township meeting, which could be informative to all, rather than duking it out at this meeting.
I'm just trying to get some clarification.
Okay.
I'm trying to understand exactly like I said, because I'm not a mathematician and I failed algebra. I'll be honest. So when they start talking value, like words, but not giving me a number that I can at least use as an example, I'm just not very well versed with that. So I process my information differently maybe than other people mathematically. So that's why I just wanted to get some clarification regarding. And when you gave the formula of assessed value divided by sales price,
Yes.
that helps. So if something is an assessed value of $35,000, but it was sold for $50,000,
You're above.
you're above the, what's that word he used? Something conversion coefficient.
So the coefficient of dispersion,
Okay.
that comes. It's funny because you're saying it's not like one set of sales that gives you your coefficient of dispersion. There's a study of sales. There's the entire neighborhood or the entire township.
So that's
that
why
has
I
to
was
go into
asking,
this.
are we talking about an average of the amount of sales, and then you get an average,
It's-
median
Oh,
from
median.
that?
I was like, yeah, we
Isn't
never
median and
average.
average the same thing mathematically?
No.
Okay, my bad. All right. Mean, that's right. I knew it was one of those M words. And yes, I did used to teach, but not math. But what I was saying is that, okay, so it's the middle number.
Yeah.
That's what median is. Median is the middle number.
Yeah.
So if I have $50,000, $70,000, $60,000, $10,000, and all that, then what the median number, the number in the middle, is going to be something along that area, right? Okay.
No.
So now I'm understanding that. Okay. So I'm just trying to understand. And you did a decent job of explaining it. Thank you.
Mary Alice?
I promise I have a very quick question. So in some neighborhoods, you have a lot of sales, in some neighborhoods you don't. It doesn't look
Yes.
to me, I just Googled it really quickly. It doesn't look to me like it takes into consideration the number of sales per neighborhood. Is that right?
We actually do.
You
That's
do.
why
It's just not in the coefficient of dispersion.
you want to, okay.
Quick question. You can tell me, you can explain it later.
Oh.
The answer is kind of. Is that
Oh.
right?
I'm like, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
It's kind of.
I'll be in on that.
Does that satisfy then the discussion of clarification? Okay. And we could probably explore this to get this, a little more training on this in the future. Yes, well,
Can
Yes.
I make a comment?
you may make a comment.
Okay, something that was stated in the meeting was there was someone that needed help with a senior exemption. And I kind of man that office every day, as you have come and seen. And if there's ever an issue with any taxpayer that needs help with their senior exemption, we actually have an open door policy. I'm not sure how that happened. I apologize if that happened to that person, but that's not the norm of our office by any way. And I wanted the taxpayers that are sitting at home to know that. If
I
you
always
have
go
an
to
issue, come sit down. If I can't resolve it, I will drive with you to Birkins. I've been to a nursing home to have someone fill out their paperwork, so I didn't understand how that kind of got missed. But I just want the taxpayers to know, like, no, we have an open door policy for them. As for any person, even if you want to just come ask about your assessments, I promise you we'll answer.
Very good. Appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
All right, so that, I think, covers the reports of officers. Now we're going to go to unfinished business, which the first item is ordinance number T 2019-05-001, an ordinance approving the annual budget and appropriation ordinance for the fiscal year 2019 to 2020, which was introduced in May 6, 2019. Is there any more comment about that? Do we need a further discussion? Yes, Mary Alice Wu.
All right, so I have a couple of questions, Danielle and Wayne. So looking over the budgets for last year, for this year, and then the updated budget, The proposal was to, at first, increase the GA from 265 to 280, and then last meeting you talked about 304 to match what the city of Champaign is doing. Is that correct?
It's actually driven by what is essentially the urging of the Department of Human Services and the township officials of Illinois supervisors to set the general assistance level at 304. And essentially, the language mandates it unless the budget does not allow. So that's the language in the resolution. That actually is what drove Andy and I to go to 304. In addition, the general assistance allowance has not kept up with inflation since the 1990s, and therefore I would like to do an increase. We had budgeted an increase this last year. My concern was I wanted to, the rolls jumped pretty significantly at the beginning of the year, and so I did not publish a new allocation amount in this year. I kept it as is because I was concerned about the budget. So essentially, you'll see in the budget to actuals, we have, at the end of the year, you'll see that we've, in the financial report, that we've spent 100% of the GA budget. We've not gone over budget. And that was because we kept it at 265. Next year, essentially, we're looking at going to 304. I've controlled the numbers to some degree. I'm also making some changes about how we do payments so that we're not paying out as much at the beginning. And I'm hoping that we'll be able, I've set a budget that I believe is a reasonable budget, and we'll be able to stay in line with that at the 304 amount.
So two follow-up clarifications on that. The first one is that when we had talked about going from 265 to 280, you said that would increase the budget by 50,000. So that's an increase of 5.6%. By going from 260 to 304, it's an increase of 14.7%. So what is the impact on the budget? What's the bottom line?
Well, essentially, if you look at the budget, I budgeted more for general assistance. And the situation that we're in is we have a surplus that we can spend from for general assistance. And if we were to get to a point where we were not able to keep enough in the bank, we'd essentially have to bring down those numbers and in alignment with the condition that, unless the budget doesn't allow it or the surplus doesn't allow it, we would have to drop that amount. I will be bringing some recommendations to the town board about how to manage the general assistance budget. And the overall cap of our levy is both for the town fund and general assistance. And in this budget this year, not only are we spending surplus, which actually I think we should, but we've also balanced more funds into the town fund to allow for some makeup on the assessor side. So you see the assessor side there's some significant increases on the assessor side. These are essentially one-time or one-year increases so that we can address some of the issues that were raised during the assessor's report. So I think that what we'd like to do next year is to basically balance back some of those monies from the town fund back into general assistance.
So the two other questions about the GA fund, the first one has to do with the salaries under the personnel, which is on page 19. This year it was at $88,000. Next year it's proposed to be at $110,000. So are we increasing staff there? It didn't appear to me that there was an offset in the supervisor unrestricted fund. The personnel seems to be, actually it's just a little bit higher, which would say to me that that's going to be a raise, but which is fine. I mean, everybody deserves a raise, but I'm curious why you're almost $22,000 higher in the GA personnel.
So not only did I provide raises this year, which were modest, but I also, on both sides, but I also have added staff on the general assistance side because of our caseload. So essentially...
So we're adding a position here, a part of a position.
We have, on the general assistance side, we have 2 full-time staff members, and we have 2 part-time staff members. With the part-time staff members, they have, they understand that their positions are temporary as budget allows.
Okay, my last question has to do with the rental assistance. So last year, we had budgeted $35,000. In the budget you presented in May, you had budgeted, I think, $72,000, and now you have budgeted $80,000.
Correct.
So I'm pretty familiar with the new program that you did in terms of eviction prevention. And so my question is, what are the remaining funds for? What specifically? Is it security deposits? If you could expand on that.
So the rental assistance program pays for eviction prevention, and it also pays for deposits and a portion of rent for homeless individuals to get into housing. Folks have to have they can't make over a certain income. We're raising that to 200%, and their lease has to be no more than twice their income. We are I budgeted, hoping that we don't spend it all, but Regional Plan Commission submitted numbers to me on the number of calls that they've received for rental assistance that they're not able to fulfill. And in theory, they're supposed to send people over to Cunningham Township who live in Urbana and to City of Champaign Township who live in Champaign. My understanding from conversation is that didn't always happen, and therefore I'm concerned now that we have a county-wide program. One, our county-wide program is, our program is growing, but I think it's been slow growth. But I am concerned about significant referrals coming from the county to Cunningham Township. So I basically allocated funds for that with the hope that we can come under. Now our assistance amount has not gone up. It's $600. We have been able to negotiate with City of Champaign Township to go up to $600 from $400, so that's great. And it kind of levels the playing field, and RPC will have the same amount. But I essentially, every time I look at the numbers that RPC has, 2,800 calls for rental assistance or homeless assistance last year, I get scared. And so we will verify, of course, we can verify through the lease, and we also check home ownership through the assessor's office to ensure that the landlord actually owns the property and it's an Urbana property. So we're very strict about only giving to Urbana, but I do have concerns that we're going to see an increase. I also spoke to the Landlord Association, and they were unaware of our program. And since I've spoken to them, we saw a bump from, our average of about 8 to 14 this last month. So I'm just trying to figure out what that sweet spot is in terms of where we're going to be at in terms of our client base. And I've budgeted, I think, a generous amount that I think will take care of that.
So what have we spent this year in that account code, roughly speaking?
We are over budget, and I can get to that information. That's another piece of the.
So at 6732.
I want to say we're at 67,000. Let me just check. Is this okay? At March 1st, we were at 52,000, and I think we're at 67,000. Which is another reason why, that's just the budgeted amount, so we blew the budget last year, and then I've increased it into anticipation of this next year.
All right, and then my final question is for Wayne, if that's okay, unless other people,
sure.
You know what, before you move, I guess I should let other people ask questions of Danielle.
It was
I apologize.
66,000, I just looked it up.
Thank
It
you.
was 66,000 this year.
Okay, so before you move then, Bill, do you have a question for Danielle?
First one on that last item. So with the eviction prevention, I know there's a limit of getting it once every 2 years. Do you also cross-check with the local agencies like Champaign and Regional Planning Commission, see
Yep.
if anybody else has given them something within the last 2 years?
So our rules were actually that each agency only looked at their list, and the rule for that agency was just once every 2 years for that agency. As of July 1, we've changed. And we actually have a complete list of everyone who's received assistance. That also hopefully will cap some assistance going forward. But we have a comment list, and we basically cross-reference that. We sync it once a month. And soon, we will all be using the homeless management information system, and so we'll have real-time data to make sure that we don't accidentally provide assistance.
Okay, and then a question on kind of, I know we have several one-time items, again, 100,000 for IMRF contribution to try to catch up on that, and you rolled over the 50,000 for a grant. The assessor, if we approve it, 71,000 for other, and another 30,000 for appraisals. So with that, that's about 250. Are there any other one-time items you can think of?
Let's see. Appraisal and then dues. I'm looking at our list. No, I think that's correct.
That's about it.
Mhm.
Okay, so that still leaves about a 350,000 gap, right? Because, I mean, if we budget, I know some of them hopefully are on the high end. So that I'm considering is kind of our deficit.
And
Going forward, we're going to have to figure out either which programs to cut or eliminate, or if they've produced results and hopefully driven down, homelessness or something, then maybe that it'll take care of itself, but that's not very likely. So going forward, we need some plan, right?
So the losses are almost entirely in general assistance. As you'll see, it was close to balanced in town fund. The town board chose to decrease the levy by $200,000 because you thought the rolls were much less than they actually are. And if you now I've shown you the history going back to the 70s of what those rolls look like, and especially in the last decade, it's very clear that somewhere between 90 and 100, 110 is going to be average. So I think we have to have that discussion, because essentially we wouldn't be looking at a deficit of this amount outside of that levy reduction, which put us in this situation. So we either have to look at cutting social services, we have to look at cutting a program, we have to look at increasing. So that's our next conversation. What I'd like to offer you in the future, once we get through this piece, is essentially what a balanced budget would look like and some different scenarios. We've been deficit spending partly because that's appropriate for the time we're in. We have, with our deficit spending, been able to get a lot of partners to the table to spend significant dollars on programs. So we went from spending as an entire county $45,000 on eviction prevention. This next year, we are budgeted at $190,000, and only $80,000 of that comes from us. So we leveraged $110,000 from other spaces with that money. So I think that's the piece. We also, with the homeless shelter, we were able to get up to $200,000 in fundraising around shelter, and we're looking at contributing up to $50,000. I'm not sure if we will use that whole amount. We put that aside last year, and we didn't use that grant monies. So essentially, I think, my recommendation is we use the surplus that we have to basically leverage other monies at the table. We do some special projects that catch up, and then we have to pull back. Essentially, we have to pull back in terms of our spending, and then we have to look at, for our core programs, what kind of increases. And honestly, it's going to be, trying to recapture some of that levy, I think, is something that we need to talk about. Otherwise, we talk about cuts, and, those are always difficult conversations.
Okay. Yeah, and just to be clear, we aren't going in the hole. We have a surplus, but we're just spending down that surplus. In some cases, we're considering it investments toward the future, especially when we can leverage other dollars like you were talking about.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Very good. Eric?
Just so I'm sure I understand, the $304 level for general assistance, that is the same level that Champaign Township will also be
Correct.
Given this coming year. Okay.
Mary Alice?
I have one final question for you, Danielle. So Carol had brought up a good suggestion in terms of the rapid response for the social services and having kind of an outline of how that would work. So I just wanted to ask you, perhaps at the next township meeting, if you could present to the board what your plan is for that.
I need 2 months, but yes.
2 months is fine.
Yeah, because I want to meet with the committee. I want us to be able
Yes.
to talk about it. And I feel like, given that I need to get things to the town board the week before, you know, but yes, I'd be happy to, and I
Great.
think that's next on deck.
Thank you.
All right, and then,
I do have a question for Wayne then.
okay, so then we had two questions coming up for Wayne. Switch again?
Nope.
Thank you, Danielle. Okay, let's start with Mary Alice, because she was the first to have
all
a
right.
question.
I do. I have two questions. The first one is we talked at length last year about travel and training expenses. I believe it was roughly around $20,000. You had said that that was a one-time occurrence and that it would drop down. So I'm going to ask you why it hasn't.
Training is necessary. We are embarking on changing the way that assessments are being done, moving from a cost-based moving from a cost-based approach on how we do assessments to a purely market-based approach to doing assessments, and that's going to take further training.
All right, so what can we expect next year? Or basically, I'm asking you this. Is this a one-time increase in training and travel, or are you foreseeing this to be
No,
a continued amount that you would like to spend on travel and
And so
training?
part of this is because also the quad is next year, right? So I expect it to at least be cut in half.
So you expect to have a $10,000 training and travel budget next year?
At least
Okay.
cut in half.
All right. My second question is relates to the additional position. I'm wondering if you can give me, excluding your own salary, a rough range of salaries in your office. It can be rough.
You said excluding
Excluding yours.
and excluding the potential other position?
Yes.
35 on the low to 52 on the high.
Okay, so 71 seemed rather high to me.
It's not, so that's not for one position, right? So we have interns now. The way we paid for those interns was because the chief deputy had not been hired for half the year. My chief deputy started in January.
All right, so you're saying that the 71,000 is to pay the, I think you said you had 2 interns,
Three.
is that right? Okay, so
Three.
3 interns, it's under personnel other.
Right.
So what is your proposed salary for this incoming one-year person?
Depending on qualifications, on the low end, 28,000 yearly, on the high end, 35.
So we're paying interns $40,000?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant for the 1 year position. No, the interns make between 10 and 11.50 an hour.
So how much are we spending a year on the interns? 20,000, 30,000, 10,000,
Give me a moment. Give me a
5,000?
moment. It was the way it was budgeted. I believe it was 12 times 20 times 3 times 52. And so that comes out to 37.4, and I think should be closer to 35.
So roughly, you're budgeting $35,000 for the additional person,
Mhm.
36,000.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Roughly.
Roughly. So we have, basically, you have 12 hours for interns. You have
Wait,
3 of
12?
them. You have 12 hours for,
It's $12 an hour.
$12. So you have 20 hours for interns. You have
Right.
3 of them, so that's 1.3 FTE. Correct?
Yes. Actually, no. No, the math doesn't quite work that way because
Sorry, 2020, no, 1.5 FTE.
that's
my bad.
closer.
And what role do the interns play?
So what we just got a new camera system. All of our property data is on paper right now. We are transferring that property data from paper into our camera system, so it'll be searchable. It'll be in a database. It'll be easy to query. It's not easy to query right now. So, for example, what I cannot do is query every house with 2 bathrooms and only 2 bathrooms.
Sure, but we had said that that would be a year project, so where are we in that project right now?
So all the record cards are scanned right now.
Okay.
Right? So it was a couple steps, right? I said scanning the cards will take a year, right? A calendar year. We have that. It's pretty much finished now, right? The second part of that is getting the data from paper to digital, and then the next part of that is actually using the data.
All right, well, I'm going to come stop by and see what these guys are doing.
Absolutely.
Because
Please.
I don't want to,
I've
I
invited
don't want
you
to
multiple
presuppose
times.
that
I
I
just wanna
understand,
put that on the record.
understand the process without, it just seems like a lot of staff to do this process. Roughly how many cards are there?
3 short of 11,000.
Okay, so there's 11,000 cars, there's 1.5 FTE scanning them and entering in the data per year. So when is the project going to be done?
This fiscal year.
So this fiscal. So we can expect the 71,000 to not appear next year?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any more?
Yes, there was. Bill Brown, did you want to also ask a
I
question?
think that answered some of my questions. I guess, I mean, I've made that comparison before between Champagne's office and our office, and have roughly the same staffing, but they have like twice as many properties. And it concerned me, you know, when Dan was assessor, and then understanding the problems in that office, I kind of understood the problem. But now that, you know, you seem engaged and active in your office, so with your added contribution to the mix, it seems like the existing staff should be enough. And I understand now you're doing extra work to get these cards digitized and searchable. It just seems like I hope you aren't trying to do everything at once on things that could be stretched out over a couple of years that you could accomplish.
So, and I understand that concern, right? So, right now we're at the point where almost all the cards are scanned. We're going to actually do some reconfiguration of the office and actually move all of our cards to the basement. But I do understand your concern. Another kind of long-term project that will go out over many, many years is to actually get it to the point to where we can archive everything and get rid of the paper. But to do that, you have to follow very specific guidelines from the Secretary of State Office of State Archives Office.
And I think Charlie
have
has dealt with some of that.
Right, and then we have a large historical backlog of cards and other items that need to be scanned so we can preserve them and eventually get rid of the paper. So
Okay.
that's
Just
a
reach out,
long-term
use
goal.
all your
That's
resources
like a
and-
6-year goal, but no, I do understand. I do understand your concern.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, does that cover then all the questions we have for the supervisor and our assessor? Okay. All right, thank you for the officer's report. Okay, yes. Sure.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes. go ahead,
I'll
please.
move ordinance number T-2019-05-001, an ordinance approving the annual budget and appropriation ordinance for fiscal year 2019-20 for approval.
Is that our second to that then?
I'll second that.
Okay, Bill Brown. Further discussion at this time? Okay, yes, Bill.
I'm tempted to cut that 71,000 in half, so if anybody...
I would support you in that.
Well, okay, then let's vote on it. I'll move to cut the 71,000 to 36,000.
I'll second that.
So there's been an amendment to the budget, cutting the extra positions funding from 71 to 36 and a half, or to 36? 36,000? Okay. Is there a discussion on that?
I'd like to hear why you guys want to cut it. I mean,
Why, or?
yeah, a lot of questions about why the cost was, but why do you guys want to cut it?
I just think that the existing resources could be used efficiently to maybe prioritize which neighborhoods you need to do first, and if there's, you know, a little more to do at the end of the year, then you stretch it out into the next year. And it's up to you whether you use interns to do that or hire somebody for, you know, $30,000 or whatever you can do.
And
That's my
Marielle?
thoughts.
Does anybody, Mary Alice, do you want to make a
No,
comment?
I pretty
No.
much concur. I was probably going to abstain from the budget because of that, so I'm happy that Bill mentioned and made that motion, because I would support the budget with the cut in half.
Okay. So let's,
So Wayne has something. Go ahead. I want to hear what.
yeah. And then also, we want to know that Dean Hazen is attending this meeting by remote connect, semi-phone.
I am present.
Thank you, Dean.
That's a little scary.
Okay.
So with that, the reason why I want to do this now is because, like I said, we're moving to a sales-based approach, purely sales-based approach to residential assessments. The way to do that, we're going to have to create basically financial models to come up with the assessments. The only way these models work is if you have the data in a way, in a format that the models can use, right? So the effect of what you're doing is either we go out and collect the data, so there are two parts of that, getting what we have in, but then also going out and verifying. So one issue is you have the garbage in, garbage out problem, right? If this is going to work, we have to have confidence in the data. And two, you need to have enough data to make the model viable.
Does that satisfy your comment?
Does do the models work neighborhood by neighborhood?
They can, but I'm afraid that no one neighborhood has enough sales for a viable model. So we're going to have to do some combining and really. So the neighborhood that a property is in is part of the input, and so kind of the model will determine exactly how much influence the neighborhood has on the price, market value.
And so couldn't you accomplish the card conversion and digitization for a couple of neighborhoods and then run the model?
Well, and then, so here's the other problem with that. We can't predict what homes are going to sell in 2018, right? You know, because we do these 3-year, we're in 2019, I'm sorry about that. We do these 3-year studies, right? And because we don't know what's actually going to sell in the future, you know, knowing which neighborhoods to do, I mean, obviously you want to look at the neighborhoods for reassessment based on the statistical models, but in terms of which neighborhoods will produce the most data for the models, you know, you basically need a crystal ball. That's why it's important to do as much as you can now so you have a good financial model to predict market value.
Mary Ellis.
So I assume that you're using last year's sales prices. You have to use last year's sales prices, right? So are you 2018?
16, 17, 18, and then it'll drop and use 17, 18, and 19.
Okay, all right. Are those records already digital? So sales prices are digital, right?
So one issue that we have is while we have our new system, the county is also integrating their new system. So there's a lag between they're the repository of that data in digital form. The repository in our office is on paper, right? So we're waiting on the county to actually get us the most recent data. And
I guess my point is that you don't need to enter in the county sales data. The county sales data is already in there.
No, what we're entering are property attributes.
Okay, so you're re-entering the property attributes for each of the sales? Is that what you're saying?
No, for every property.
No, I understand that, but you said that you are using, your equation uses the sale price of that neighborhood versus the assessed price of that neighborhood, right? So you have two pieces.
No. So you're thinking of two different things, right? What you're talking about is how we assess or how we measure uniformity and fairness. But in terms of what I'm doing, right, and my role as assessor is predicting what the market value of a particular property will be when they sell. The way to do that is we take the property attributes and then compare it to historical sales records and then predict the market value. So what we need, that's why we need those property characteristics into our system so then we can build a model.
You're looking for apples to apples.
Right.
So you could do a stratified random sample and get all that information to create your model, train your model. I'm looking at Bill. Anyway, I agree. I think that, I mean, you can certainly, I would be willing to pass it with the 36,000. I will abstain from voting on the budget if it is not. And I would say to Wayne, if you want the additional 35,000, then come to us with a proposal mid-year.
Well, I'd just like mid-year. Oh, and I've invited all of you to come to the office to kind of.
I'll be visiting. I promise.
show you.
How does, the county's using DevNet now, right?
Yes,
And are we using something else?
we are.
Okay, and do they talk to each other?
Not yet.
If they talk to each other, will that reduce any of this workload?
Well, the grunt work of this is reading the property record card, putting what's on the property record card into our digital system. So
And none of that exists in DevNet?
no.
Okay.
So we're talking about big work, but cautious budget. All right, so we have a motion to make an amendment. Let's make a vote on that. Do you want to, yes, Jared?
Just one comment before we vote. Seeing, as you put it, Mary Alice, come back to us mid-year, and I think you could still go ahead with your plan, Wayne, with a plan that you need to come back and justify again the other half of this expense. You can do what you were planning on doing anyway. Come back to us mid-year for a budget increase. In light of that, I would support the amendment to reduce that in half.
Cherise.
I guess the question I have is for Wayne, how would the budget cut affect your ability to hire someone or to get anybody even part-time?
Well, at this point, right, I would have to choose whether to keep the interns or whether to hire someone full-time. I mean, there's just no way to do it both. And if I do both, and I get to the point to where I run out of money in December and I have a project that's 50% complete, then it's,
So
and
can you
then
do
remember,
one or
it's a
the
2-month
other?
It's a 2-month process to pass a budget, because you're talking about passing a new budget, which means this entire 2-month process, we would have to start over, unless I'm wrong about that, Fred.
It's an amendment to the budget.
No, you're not.
Right.
I said you still aren't going to have more than your levy. So I don't know where you're going to get.
And let's speak into the mics.
From our budget, from our surplus. So what would have to do to do
To what, a budget?
Can,
It's the same thing going through the whole process of what you're doing now.
can we,
Speak
can we
in the
hear?
mics.
In the mic, please.
Yeah. Have a conversation here so we all can share that.
As I understand the questions, what would you have to do to amend the budget to make these changes later on? It's the same process that you're doing now. It wouldn't necessarily take as long, but the steps are the same.
So the 1-month notice,
You have to have a tentative budget designated and notice and a public hearing and a vote on the proposed amended budget. So it's all the same steps.
Okay, so that's the situation. It's possible, but it would take some effort to make that happen, just as much as it has to this point. All right, so let's make a vote then, I guess. Are we ready? Okay. All those in favor of the amendment, which would reduce the amount of the budgetary line item for assistance down to 36,000?
Point of order, this sounds pretty official. I wonder if we should have a roll call?
Okay, then let's do a roll call vote, yes. Good point.
Okay, this is a vote on the amendment.
On the amendment.
Okay, trustee Brown?
Yes.
Trustee Hazen?
Yes.
Hersey?
No.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Roberts?
No.
Wu?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that passes. So we have an amended budget, and is there further conversation about that? Are we ready to vote? Okay, would you please call the roll for that?
Trustees Brown?
Yes.
Hazen?
Yes.
Hersey?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
Wu?
Yes.
Okay, so we do have a budget that has passed. All right. I didn't write down who made the amendment. Was it Bill and Mary Alice? Okay. Okay. All right, that takes care of unfinished business, and now we go move to new business. Thank you. Okay, this is resolution number T-2019-07-013R, a resolution relating to participation by elected officials in the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund.
I move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, Bill Brown makes approval, Mary Alice Wu. We have talked about this before in another instance, another venue. Is there discussion? Okay. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Need a roll call.
Another roll call? All right. That's right. These are new.
Trustee Brown,
Yes.
Hazen,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
and Wu.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Next comes resolution number T-2019-07-014R, a resolution authorizing an agreement with the County of Champaign for the Geographic Information System Services.
I'll move approval.
Bill Brown moves approval. Seconding by
Second.
Eric Jacobson. Is there discussion?
Can somebody refresh my memory what this is?
Okay.
This is a annual contract we have with the RPC, Champaign County RPC, for access to GIS. GIS is what is our mapping software that we use.
Okay.
Okay, so it's
Yeah,
a
now
handy
I
tool.
remember now, thank you.
Okay. All right, this is going to be another roll call vote.
Trustees Brown,
Yes.
Hazen,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Wu.
Yes.
Okay, that's approved. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a discussion on social service funding allocations. Supervisor Daniel Chenoweth.
I promised Charlie it was going to be a short meeting. Sorry, Charlie, I'm not in charge. So, okay, I have given comment on the mayor's suggestions for changes. Essentially, there's, between the committee recommendation and the council recommendation, there are four changes. The first is to reduce CU Fair volunteer coordination from 15,000 to 75,000. The second is to increase Aramac, which is
7,500.
excuse me, 7,500. Somehow, yeah, I got about 4 hours of sleep last night. So Aramac to go up from 5,000 to 7,500. It looks like the Youth Assessment Center was added from 0. It was not recommended by the committee to 5,000. And then it appears that, I'm assuming this comes from council, and it was news to me when I saw it this morning when I received this for the first time, that the Champaign-Urbana Area Project STEP and Truce, STEP would receive 2,500 and Truce would receive 3,500. I've commented on the other changes. I just want to say, one, I received the City Council's recommended allocations today. I had a migraine the Monday that you met, and I did review some of the tape, but I actually didn't get to the end, so it was news to me. I have serious concerns about a last-minute addition of funding CU Area Project STEP and Truce programs. I believe CU Area Project does amazing work in our community, as does many of our applicants. That said, the STEP application was wholly incomplete. It lacked income data, measurable outcomes, capacity information was unclear, and it only listed 2 funding sources, City of Urbana/Township and private donations. They listed 1 other collaboration with agencies, so they scored low. Compared to other applications, the STEP application scored one of the lowest using the criteria sheet. The Truce program, although a stronger application, lists a total of 6 families served last year. There's no income data, and the budget is entirely administrative and training. I do not support fundings for these programs, despite the fact that I think Sierra Project is fantastic. There were a number of programs that we did not fund, some of whom I've been working with very closely for over a year, who are close partners with the township, because their applications were incomplete and they scored low, right? So I'm in a position now where essentially you're asking the township, perhaps the city, I'm not sure, in this case the township, to essentially approve funds which are unfair to other agencies that had similar problems with their application and were excluded for that reason. Now, I suggest CU Area Project apply for rapid response funding if applicable, and we will determine what that looks like. And future, they can work with the township and the city to gather technical assistance for their application to ensure it's complete. We provided that technical assistance for any applicant who wanted it. CU Area Project did not avail themselves of that. This is not blaming, I'm just reporting. So I find it very difficult. I don't know exactly where this is coming from, and I do not think it's appropriate for the town board or the council to make changes to recommendations, especially in situations where the scoring was so low. It really, it was very concerning and upsetting to me to see this recommendation. Again, not because of the content of their work, but because of the process which we have so carefully laid out. I do have similar concerns to some degree with Youth Assessment Center, although they've been a fundee in the past. They did not score very high, but they certainly had a complete application. So I step aside on that issue. But with this, I have some significant concerns. I believe that you should simply go with the committee's recommendation plus the mayor's suggestions, and I would suggest as the supervisor that you remove CU Area Project. I also just want to say the process, although it's been improved, has been difficult, and I really want to sit down, and I've told this to the mayor, I really want to sit down and discuss the process next year, in that we're trying very hard to get away from the person who lobbies the hardest gets funding, right? And I think we've done a great job in that way, but I think it's really important next year that we look at quantifiable impacts for Urbana residents and for township funds, especially now that they are more and more scarce with the increase of our programs. They need to extend the work of the township. I do not support peppering money around to various agencies in town. That may have worked at a time when we had a surplus and the programs were at historic lows. But I have worked very hard to increase the programs at the township. I encourage every town board member to come to the township. You will see us sweating it. We are sweating it in that office. We are packed in. Yes, we increased the staff. Come and see how many people are standing outside our door. Come and see how many more hundreds of people we are serving each year. And the assessor's side, they are sweating it. I am in the office every day. They are packed in. I can't get access to the copy machine because the assessor's staff are constantly recording property cards, which is great. I think that's wonderful, but it's like the hustle compared to what it was 4 years ago when this town board was largely silent. It is a totally different day at the township. And I think it's for the better for the residents. We are focused on equity. I'm not going to argue with any decisions that you made this evening. That's not I am not the assessor, but I will definitely say I feel like the tone of the town board is one of a kind of surveillance, and I would like to see you all come and visit the office, be with us, meet our participants, your participants too, and see the kind of work that we're doing. And this is why you're seeing the budget increases that we're asking for. And this is why we're trying to make sure that the social service funding actually hits the spot. Because we have just desperately poor people in this community who are completely invisible. Homeless mothers who are trading sex for a place to stay every night. It is despicable. And so we have got to stop being asleep at the wheel in this community and start making some change. I am speaking out of turn for the social services, but really, I encourage you to come, open your eyes, and see what's happening in this community.
Well, we were very aware that there's a new dynamism in the township office, and we do appreciate that,
Thank
Danielle Chenoweth. And This is a discussion about the allocations. We're making recommendations. We're not actually going to be voting, but we are going to direct staff, i.e. your township employees, to forward. We're going to forward to you the recommendations, and I guess that will be the result of the end of this discussion.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to make comments at this time or recommendation? Yeah, Bill Brown.
I will say our discussion over the administrative cost in our last discussion was to try to prevent administrative waste. And we need to do that if we're going to carry some of these programs forward, because we're spending down and we need to make sure we aren't wasting money.
Yes, and I support this, and I think, honestly, from where I'm sitting, I know that there's additional staff needed, but I really can't speak to the level of staff that's needed. It's outside my area of expertise. What I can tell you, this is the piece, is that the staff who work in the township now are hustling. On the assessor side, on the supervisor side, if you come over, and I encourage you, you can drop by any time, you will see, except for smoke breaks, which we ask, and poetry breaks, people, they have their 5 minutes outside because sometimes things are very intense, but really the level of service, the professionalism of the service, the expansion of service, the way that the seniors were actually mailed to by the assessor's office to receive their entitlements, and the way in which the assessor's office, I would call what has happened in the past gross neglect. And in a lot of ways, we're trying to catch up on that. If you want to catch up slower, I feel like you do you, right? So if you think that we need
want
to
to catch
pull
up
back
smarter,
on that piece,
okay?
I support it. What's that?
We want to catch up smarter.
That's fine. I don't want to hear that, are they, do you need them interns, are they standing around? Just come over, you'll see very quickly that that's not the case. That is my concern, is there's no standing around happening at the township.
Okay, thank you. Comments? Yes, Sharice.
In response to regarding, number one, I have been over to the township offices, and I went there specifically to get help regarding my mother's tax assessment. The other thing is I lobbied very heavily for STEP and Truce because I think that they are a new organization. The stuff that is required on the application is not necessarily something that they have right now because it started in February.
Mm-hmm. That's my understanding.
Okay, and so they're going to have limited information regarding any of that anyway. So I feel that because, and I lobbied for them just as other council members have lobbied for groups that they felt very strongly and passionately about. I lobbied for them because I feel that they work with children that are at risk, and when you talk about folks that have been thrown away, in some ways, those are the children that they work with as well. And they are, it's a new program, and they are just getting clientele in as they can, or as are willing. We all know that people are not always willing to try to improve whatever their situation may be as well. So they work with those children because a lot of people don't want to work with them. And these are the people that Courtney Carruthers is trying to work with, and Josh Mayer, I think that's his last name. But they're the ones that they try to work with. And they go to the Ready School, at least Josh, I know he does, and he pulls kids out for counseling and for interventions and everything else. So this is something new within the community, period, as far as what they call restorative justice and how they can work with that. So that's why I lobbied so heavily for them. And I'm sorry that their application may have been wholly incomplete. I'm sorry that it lacked income data or measurable outcomes. It's kind of difficult to get any of those things intact and in order when you've only been around for 4 months. but it was my recommendation that I even said that they should even try to do it. And it's difficult to get started when you have limited resources and there's no way to get the word out there in such a short period of time. So as far as that's concerned, then what I would ask is that that there be something, maybe a special workshop for those groups that are just now starting, or those organizations that are just now starting to try to contribute to community issues, so that there can be something said about how they fill out grant applications or so forth, because this is a new organization. It's not an organization that's been around but for literally a few months. Okay?
Right. Jared Miller.
So Danielle, and this was largely our discussion about approving these funds in addition, even though they were not included in the original thing, and I understand and felt uncomfortable approving them due to the incompleteness of the application, but I also understood Sharice's argument about folks being new and not having enough time. And I'm wondering if it might be possible for us to consider, rather than a singular application period, a continual application period, or multiple application periods for grants, rather than like this is your one shot during the year to get it in, and if you don't do it, then, well, you're screwed until next year because we're not going to award you funds. Because new organizations start all the time. Somebody may come up with something super fresh and it might be really successful, and we may need to consider it. I know we're setting aside emergency funds for things such of that nature, but I don't know, maybe this is a solution to the problem of, well, we didn't make this one, there's another one 3 months from now, come back and apply again. So that would be something I would thoughts from you guys.
I would consider that something kind of equitable. Instead of, once a year, maybe 3 times a year, or once every 4 months, to just see if there have been any changes, if there have been any getting over that learning curve of even how this process works.
I would like to just comment that would take staff time at the supervisor's office, which would be duplicating and triplicating perhaps during the year, which we'd have to consider. Mary Alice.
Yeah, speaking as somebody who was on the committee, we spent countless hours actually reviewing the applications, discussing the applications. I know staff, both Danielle and Sheila, spent countless hours meeting and sitting down with people, helping them fill out their applications. So a couple of things I'd like to propose. The first one is I think that this was actually the mayor's idea originally. I think that there should be a separate application for new organizations, for emerging organizations, something that's shorter, something that's more realistic. And then I think that we should build something into, let's call it the Rapid Response Fund instead of the Emergency Fund perhaps, and have that short application where somebody could come in a couple times. But to have these rolling cycles of approval systems, it's going to take a lot of time on everybody. I think there were 3, 4, 5, there were 6 of us on that committee, Danielle, is that right? So my 2 recommendations are A, shorten the form, make one for just an emerging organization, and the second one perhaps include something in the emergency fund / rapid response fund.
Okay, and I take that's going to be part of our then direction to staff. Other comments? Yes, Eric.
Sharice, as she indicated, did take the initiative to champion CU area project, but I supported it. I supported her strongly. I know Courtney, I know Josh, but more importantly, I know somewhat what they're doing, and I was persuaded, in spite of the fact that their application, I really appreciate the time and the effort and the thoughtfulness that went into evaluating the applications. But at the end of the day, I felt that CU area project is doing something that's unique, that nobody else is doing, and that's absolutely vital. You know, the work right on the street with people who are maybe going to fall through the cracks if otherwise. So I agreed, I didn't take the lead in this, Bruce took the lead in this, but I agreed to step outside due process this once. I don't mean to make this a precedent, although I won't say I would never do it again, because there isn't as well thought out as our process was for all of this. There's no such thing as a perfect process when you're dealing with something as multivariable as how to help people and communities who really need help and are in complicated situations. So I felt this was a unique situation, and yes, so we did kind of step out of our boundary, out of our comfort zone, and obviously listening to Danielle's reaction, I'm even farther out of my comfort zone, but
That's what I'm here for, Eric.
but I will still stand up for what we did.
Bill Brown.
Yeah, I was impressed with Truce's presentation to council, if that's what you call lobbying. And I was also I understood from the discussion last week that any contribution to Truce would be matched by the Regional Planning Commission, so that also influenced my willingness to support the Truce contribution. And I asked to see the scores on these, and I don't think that was ever provided to us. So you can say they scored really low, but if we don't see the scores, then we have no idea how they score. So maybe in future years we could actually see the scores you guys come up with.
Then I'd like to just say myself that I appreciate all the times when city council members or township members have the fire to advocate for something they really believe in, and if they do it very eloquently, which I think we've heard in the past. One is tending to support those special projects, because we all have a special project in our hearts someplace in the community, and it's great to be supported by fellow council and township members.
Can I just respond?
Yes,
Thank
Danielle.
you. I'll try to be brief. So my first question is, in this case, and I know because I was the kid writing grants who didn't know what I was doing, but we had 2 workshops where we were very clear, and we asked people, come make appointments with us. Here's our card. Here's Alyssa's phone number. Here's my email. We can review your application beforehand. Like, if I just feel like we were willing to do all of that 100%, and it didn't happen in this case. They did not, at least they did not come to me to talk through the applications. And so that's the first piece. The second is we had lots of new organizations. For example, CU Win Recovery is a recovery home for women coming out of prison. I've worked with them for over a year, and they submitted an application that had some incomplete aspects and was a new organization that didn't have the track record to be able to stand up. And so it bothers me that we would support, one new organization and not others, because they're all deserving in that way. I am not falling on my sword about $6,000. To me, my concern is about process. It's not about the dollar figure. STEP had 6 families that they served so far to date. I think it's just too soon for them to come to a government agency and ask for money. STEP, not Truce. I know Truce has mental health funding. So, I think you do your grassroots funding first. You build it past 6 families, which is a very, very small amount. We did the same thing with GROW. They came to us when it was too early, and we told them it's too early. The argument that the mayor made about CU Fair is that they're although they've been in existence for a while, they're still leveraging up. So I just think a lot of the things that qualified here, they apply, and ultimately, I really think they could have had a successful application had they talked to us and allow us to review the application. And so I do support not quarterly. That would kill our office. I would not appreciate that. But we are looking at rapid response funding, and I think that you should ask them to submit a complete application. We can help them. I will do technical assistance. I will walk through that process. I just don't think it's appropriate to move forward with this and not the others when we're talking about having another midterm cycle, and that's an opportunity for them to come forward. But again, you're the town board. I'm the supervisor. I do not have budget authority over the town fund, only as a general assistance fund. This money comes out of the town fund, so do what you want.
Okay, so is there then further discussion? Is there a comment that would like to make a direction to staff?
Yeah, I think in light of the new information provided, we could leave, I would be in favor of leaving off the CU area project and leaving the rest as stated in the current spreadsheet, and asking staff to bring us a resolution or ordinance, whatever we need to fund those.
Jared.
I would just also like to say that that was my original suggestion when it was initially brought up, that they complete the emergency or rapid response application and apply for funds that way. But we did approve it, and I'll still stand by it. But Danielle, I know 4 times a year, maybe not a full application process. I'd just like to get a thought real quick on if it was a limited application. What if you only took 5? You know what I mean? Instead of processing a full board, you say, we have a limited number of spots open. This is how many. We'll take 3. We'll take 5 at this time. What about something like that? Other than I'm just looking for any solution that is not just a one-time-a-year opportunity.
Well, my proposal is a rapid response grant, which would be a midterm grant, and it would have to be, it's a new organization, it's an emerging need. They're responding to community-based violence, and we would have a different grants process. That's what I think that we should look at doing, and I'm happy to bring a proposal, working with the city staff on that, and we can discuss it in the coming months.
Because we haven't put anything to paper as far as describing the rapid response thing, correct?
You just voted on a budget. We don't have a framework, and so we do not disperse until we have a framework.
Okay. Well, I'd be interested to see the discussion on that, and because maybe that is all it needs to be to get new folks in. But the way it sounded when we originally discussed it, it sounded like it was going to be much more limited to something that was super stringent. So I think.
Well, what I'm hearing is that in some ways our process may not be inclusive of new groups in the way that the town board would like to see, and so I think we should really consider how do we address those newer groups that are just getting off the ground. And I think the town board members have a right to advocate for the agencies. I just want to, stand for a particular process and fairness and equity in this case.
Well, in addition, I would just like to say, too, that the amount that is being asked to be allocated is about a third of what, the original request was. So maybe a little less than that. So they're not asking for full monies or anything like that. Because a little bit can go a long way, even with either one of those groups, they can make a little bit go a long way. And that's, I don't see that the amount given, which is not a lot, I don't see how that really impacts on the allocation that much right now, actually. They may not, and they could, it'd give them also some time to enhance their abilities in filling out the applications for the future. That's something that I think could be worked around. So I'm still advocating for them to be financed now before the school year kicks in, because that's when they do most of their work. That's when they are working with kids the most during the school year.
So maybe we want to do a straw poll on how we feel about this particular allocation.
Can I ask a
Yeah.
process question?
Go ahead, Mary Alice.
So I think, Danielle, I heard you say that when we looked this over, we approved it at council. So we had a committee meeting last week. So it's my understanding we just moved it forward to city council, which is directly
Correct.
following this.
Chair-
So, yeah, I just wanted to say it hasn't been voted
That's
on
my
by
understanding.
council. Okay,
Chair
all right. And
mentioned
then,
that, but, yeah, I
We-
understand the process is still in discussion.
okay, all right, I just want to be sure. And then, so I understand in terms of, do we actually, there's no resolution or anything on our agenda here, so how is this approved, the allocations?
It's just direction to staff to set certain amounts so that they can go
Gotcha.
draft
Okay,
agreements.
thank you. So we don't even need to vote on it, is what I'm hearing you say.
No, but eventually you need to make a decision and direct staff to set certain amounts for each group.
Gotcha.
Right, which is probably what we should be doing now.
Dennis?
Yes.
I think we're all in
Sure.
agreement that we wanted to continue forward with the adjustments that we made last time we discussed, that were recommended by the mayor, and I will still support sending the amounts forward for CU Fair,
And,
or co-op, I'm sorry.
all right, and so where does this leave CU area project?
I support
You do, okay.
as we voted, or not as we voted, but as we,
But as is
as
indicated
was
on the-
discussed and as is indicated on the sheet.
On the sheet,
I still
right.
support that.
Right. All right, is that the general consensus? I guess I support it. Okay. Eric?
Yeah, I'll support it. I think they need the message
Yeah.
that they've got to do a whole lot better next year. I gave a parting message to CU Fair on their way out the door, and so these folks should get a message too.
All right. Yeah, and Mary Alice?
I actually do not support the change. I agree with Danielle that there were other groups, several groups, that we didn't even read because their applications were not complete. We had a pile of, we're not reading you because you didn't complete your application. Now, I hear you, Cherie, and what you're saying in terms of the work that these people are doing, and I think they are doing really good work for the community. Jared's suggestion in terms of how we can accommodate that would be to develop this rapid response and then in 2 months' time, go back to them and say, please submit. This is kind of another small funding opportunity, and we'd be happy to help you with that. So I'm not in support of doing that at this time. If they came back with a complete application, as we deem, it doesn't necessarily have to be the exact application that we're doing right now. It could be a modified one. I'd be absolutely willing to support funding them for this fiscal year.
All right.
Point of process.
Yes, go
I
ahead.
thought there was a motion on the table to remove that. So can the clerk just clarify where we are in the process?
There's no motion directing.
There's no motion.
Not yet.
And whatever is done here has to be mirrored in council as well.
Okay,
So,
so there's no motion on the table.
so does this group feel comfortable with following the suggestion that Mary Alice Wu did, that we're still open to funding them, but that the way of funding them would be through the rapid response funding mechanism which we're setting up?
From what I just heard, we had 4 people who wanted to continue forward as it is listed on these recommendations.
All right.
I think Mary Alice was against it, and so was Bill.
Okay, so Eric?
Yeah, so this is in any case, the item on the agenda is discussion.
Right.
So this may be endless, but there's no decision yet tonight.
But don't forget Dean.
Yeah, Dean is
Dean,
on.
you still there?
Yeah, Dean, are you interested in weighing in on this in one way or another?
Is he
I
there?
lost him. We might have lost him.
I'm so sorry for the delay.
He fell
Yes.
asleep.
So we're having a conversation, Dean, about whether we would fund $2,500 to the STEP program and $3,500 to Truce, which is being advocated. by some members of the council, but the cautionary element is that their applications were incomplete and that there were other programs that also had incomplete applications, which were eliminated from consideration because of that factor. The alternative would be that there's going to be setting up a rapid response funding from extra monies in the treasury of the township, and they're invited to return and reapply when those funds are made available in a few months.
Yeah, I agree with Mary Alice's suggestion on that. I apologize. I had my mute button on.
Okay. All right. Yeah, all right, I guess that's not, yeah, I guess we can't make a decision, really. So, okay, thank you. We'll come back to this at a future time. That's really the end of our agenda for the Township Board. Therefore, with no further business seeing in front of us, I call us adjourned.